girls just want to have fun Pleiades reading.
This is the cover of the new fall issue of Pleiades. We're really excited. It should be hitting your mailbox any day now. Welcome, everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome. This is our Fall Pleiades 2021 issue launch. I'm Jenny Mulberg, co-editor of Pleiades with the fabulous Erin Adair Hodges. Say hi, Erin.
Hi, Erin.
Hi, Erin. Thank you all for joining us. We're really excited about this reading tonight. We're featuring short readings by 8 fantastic writers whose work we are thrilled to showcase in our new issue. If you subscribe to Pleiades, thank you. You should receive your new issue in the mail in the next week or two. And if you don't subscribe yet, you can follow the link that I'm going to drop in the chat in just a minute. You can either subscribe or purchase the fall issue on its own. Right now, until the end of the month, we're currently reading for our next special folio, which will feature Latinx LGBTQIA+ poets. That special folio will be guest edited by Ruben Quesada. Please visit our website to learn more about that. And I also want to draw your attention to our first ever Proofer Poetry Prize named for Kevin Proofer, our former editor of Pleiades. And that will open for submissions during the month of October. The prize is for a single poem, and the winner will receive $1,000 in publication in Pleiades. And our final judge for that prize will be Kevin Proofer. So please mark your calendars and stay tuned for guidelines. You can find those on our website. We'll open again for regular submissions during the month of December. Please also mark your calendars for our next Pleiades Visiting Writers Series event, which is on October 28th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. We're very excited to host Catherine Nuremberger and Shara McCallum that evening. And if you don't already follow us on social media, please give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at Pleiades Press or at Pleiades Mag, or on Facebook, where you can find more information on our upcoming events. I just want to give a big thanks to our intrepid staff at Pleiades, especially our new associate managing editor, Morgan Graham, and our new special folios editor, Jen Popa. And an enormous thank you to Toni Jensen, who will join us here in a little bit. And Toni curated this issue's special folio on essays from the Southwestern United States and borderlands. So we're very excited to hear some pieces from that folio tonight. And now I will hand it over to Erin.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everyone. So to echo what Jenny said, I feel like I use the modifier excited a lot when I'm talking about our writers, but it's how I feel. So I also wanted to quickly add that we are really honored to hold space for Toni to edit and curate this folio. But Jenny and I are also incredibly excited about the project we're invested in, as we both hail from the Southwest. Jenny's from Texas, and I was born and raised in New Mexico. And personally, and this is not a rivalry, Jenny and I talk about this a lot, but as New Mexico is an oft overlooked area of the country, oft misunderstood, hardly ever thought of maybe. Like the first time I went to a writers conference in 2014, people kept being like, oh, you're from Albuquerque. I love Arizona. I'm like, So I just want to point out that whenever we mention New Mexico, I'm going to be going like 505, which is the old school area code, just to celebrate. But we are also really excited to welcome poets from the Midwest, from the East Coast, from the Northwest. So wherever you are coming in from, wherever you are writing from, we welcome you. Thank you so much. Our first poet is Rebecca Aronson. Rebecca Aronson is the author of Anchor, forthcoming from Orison Books, and Ghost Child of the Atalanta Bloom, winner of the 2016 Orison Books Poetry Prize, as well as winner of the 2019 Margaret Randall Book Award from the Albuquerque Museum Foundation, and Creature, winner of the Maine Traveled Roads Poetry Prize. She's been a recipient of a Prairie Schooner Strauss Award, the Loft Literary Center's Speak Easy Poetry Prize, and a Tennessee Williams Scholarship to Swanee. And she is co-founder with me of the Bad Mouth reading series, which is a series of words and music in Albuquerque, where she lives. Please welcome Rebecca Aronson.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin and Jenny, and just Pleiades staff in general. And it's kind of overwhelming to see so many people here. This is great. I'm going to read two poems. One of them is in the issue and the other one is not. The first one, the one that's in the issue, is called What Have I Ever Needed to Say? And this poem came out of the experience of visiting my mother in a nursing home where she was with dementia in the last years of her life. What have I ever needed to say? When my mother asks, what do we have to do with the chair? She might mean something about the room she lives in, which will never become familiar. Or maybe she'd like the blinds drawn against the blinding gray-white day. It's not any time here, she tells me, and I agree. Not Christmas, not Tuesday, not the liminal hour when everything softens and stripes orange and gold, like the colors of the woven silk shawl she used to toss over her bare shoulders on a warm summer night. No. If everything is actually occurring at once, whose shoulders were formed of polished marble? In Italy, when she couldn't remember the word for Campari, she'd ask for a drink that was rosso and amaro, red and bitter. The lipstick some aide has smeared on her disappearing lips has filled the cracks in her skin. The Same way red dust coated our arms when we hiked in the desert. The taste of it in our mouths, like the remnants of a long dry well, a bitter chalk reminding us of something we were missing. And the second poem I'm going to read is about my breasts. No, actually, it's about a cancer scare that I had a couple of years ago, and it's called Latch. My hand in the dark on the lump in my breast, right where the needle made its bite, where I used to ask a friend to help me fasten a cameo straight on my favorite blue dress, the one with the front buttons that came undone if you looked at them too long. I floated in midnight lakes, pale areolae in star-flecked water, everyone's wet, skin moonlit and fantastic. I flashed a man who wouldn't stop staring at the shape of my chest under my waitress uniform. There were hours spent fixed in place while the late afternoon swooned dark and the baby sucked and fought sleep, his mouth on the swollen nipple, a milk drop purled on his lip when he finally let go. Yes, I bound them and hid them in jogging bras, under loose sweaters and formless dresses, wanted them smaller for a better silhouette, a smooth line and I could glide past without a snag, then spilled them over bikini tops, which untied as I dove, but mostly I did not think of them. A body is just a set of nerves in fur and spangles, a shopping cart with one disobedient wheel. But now here I am in the vast new country where fear lives, the tender island in my breast, clutching a scribble of creases, this map of tributaries, but no roads. Thank you.
I'll snap for all of us. And then at the very end of the evening, we can all unmute and give everyone a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And speaking of excited, I'm very excited to hear our next reader, Taylor Byas. Taylor Byas is a Black Chicago native currently living in Cincinnati, Ohio. She was the first place winner of both the 2020 Poetry Superhighway and the 2020 Frontier Poetry Award for New Poets contests, and a finalist for the 2020 Frontier Open Prize. She is the author of the chapbook Bloodworm from Variant Lit and her debut full-length collection, I Done Clicked My Heels 3 Times, is forthcoming from Soft Skull Press in spring of 2023. She is represented by Rena Rossner of the Deborah Harris Agency. Please join me in welcoming Taylor Byas.
Hello. Thank you, Jenny, for introducing me, to Pleiades for having me, and to all these wonderful readers that I get to read with tonight. I'm going to follow Rebecca's lead and read two poems, the one that's in the issue and one that isn't. So I'm going to start with the one that's in the issue. And this is from sort of like my current project, which is thinking about the male gaze and the ways that it harms, which I guess both are kind of in that same vein, but this is the one in the mag. So this is summer camp field trip to the water park. My white friend says, "You can't swim, can you?" As if she's known the answer to this question all her life, then changes the subject. Did you really wear a one piece instead of a bikini? Before they unleash us into the park, the counselors tell us to follow the buddy system. But come on, the system is rigged. We know which buddies will follow each other into the single family restrooms, who will emerge with their bikini straps loosened, the shoddy retie job. We place bets on who will cement their centers together in the deep end of a pool, who will steal a feel in the lazy river's march. I buddy up with another Black girl so we can wet our hair in solidarity. We share a double tube on the park's steepest slide, emerge from its black mouth with both hands in the air, our tongues primed for the smack of chlorine. In the wave pool, an older white boy carries me out to the deep end on his shoulders to play a game. And it happens without warning. My 2-foot ejection into the air, my accidental cannonball into too deep water. I thought I would die, only seeing the bottom half of everyone, their legs working to keep them afloat as I drifted to the bottom. The emergency whistle sounded like a siren song from the pool floor, and the boy's legs circled a few feet away. I knew he was watching the balloons of my last breaths pop on the water's surface and hoping that nothing else came up at all. Okay, and the second poem is the most recent poem that I've written in this current moment. I had like a very small car accident. I'm fine, car is fine. But it like brought up a lot of emotions. And so I naturally wrote a poem about it because that's what we do. So this is after the car accident. I slow traffic with my worry, kneeling and checking my car for damage. My palm on its feverish hood like a mother checking a child's temperature, and the heat of the sun doubling its sickness. In the black paint's warped reflection, I could be mistaken for my father, this froggish position, squatting on my toes, my forehead becoming his in its rumpled state, even our concern biological, shared, right down to the way we squint at an injured thing, the way we have only temporary fixes for what is broken. I list the damages out loud, to no one, to the metronome of my hazard lights, to convince myself I've done it. This too is hereditary, struggling with admissions of guilt. On the phone with the insurance company, I begin to unbraid a legacy of blamelessness. Yes, I was operating the vehicle alone. The car was parked and empty when I hit it. This is just another version of the tree falling in the forest question. If no one saw me hit the car, did I do it? If my father never apologized on our old phone calls, did he truly wound me? The insurance agent on the phone is asking questions, following the printed script taped next to her computer screen. Is the car drivable? Are you hurt? I don't know which question I'm answering anymore. It doesn't matter. Yes, it comes pouring out of me like smoke from a car's underbelly, the hiss of air finding the path of least resistance. Yes, yes.
Representative snaps for Taylor. I love a fresh poem. I love being in a space where someone's like, This is new. Thanks for trusting us with that. So I am privileged to introduce our next reader. Elizabeth Lee is an emerging Korean American writer living in New Mexico. Her work has been published in Akashics Press anthology Santa Fe Noir and has won a prize in the Chestnut Review's 2021 fiction contest. She's currently working on a memoir about trauma, womanhood, and infertility called The Remembering Body, and a novel about two sisters separated during the Japanese occupation in Korea called Island. She's a former Fulbright scholar, documentary filmmaker, and television producer, and currently lives with her husband and two dogs in Santa Fe, or as we used to call it, Santa. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you guys for being here, taking a break to come and listen to some words. I will be reading the first third of a personal essay. It's the first time I've written nonfiction, and it was, anyways, it was a great experience. My dog just came back from surgery, so you might hear her whimpering in the background. Apologies for that. Okay, it's called Ghost Oceans. I stand on a cliff in northern New Mexico, seeing my insides in the rocks, fascia, red muscle, marbled fat, teeth perched on eroding banks of red and gray earth, dark ancient blood soaked deep in the sand, sandstone, and hard volcanic ash. There's something I know I have to find here, if only I could remember what it was. I slide my hand over my tender stomach and the questions rise again. Why did the baby die? The white orb of the sun swallows into itself all color and sound and feeling, and my body goes limp. It's my fault. When I first came to New Mexico, I saw all kinds of interesting shapes in the red and purple rocks, roast beef, ice cream, a camel's back. I felt desperate for a new life. I lived for too long in the same 73-degree weather, looking up at a perpetually cloudless sky. I had worked for years in television, anticipating what might look real and feel real, when everything about work and life felt hopelessly fake. I needed a portal to the divine, like I needed my childhood wonder again. Most importantly, I needed to know there were things in the world that would outlast my body and its memories. After we found out we were pregnant, my husband and I stared at the black computer screen in the doctor's office, studying the ghost lines that curved across each other like tiny white fossils, and waited for a heartbeat. The doctor finally pointed to a white blur. There it is, and there's the cord. He took a deep breath, but it's gone into the fallopian tube. I'm sorry, if we leave it there, your tube will rupture. You'll bleed to death. 2 days later, he cut out the fallopian tube and the embryo still inside. The blood started immediately, turning my blue child bathroom into a warm vault, thick with the scent of iron and sea salt. I hunched over my abdomen and frowned at all the translucent wires coming out of it. How could I be entirely sure that they hadn't switched out my body parts while I was unconscious and made me part alien? I wiped and saw clumps of dark jelly on the toilet paper. Are you my baby? I asked. Are you? Of course it was madness, talking to my own blood like that. The baby was gone. The left fallopian tube was gone. But I had lost my mind that day, and it was all I could do not to throw myself out the window when I saw the red home inside my womb had started breaking apart. The wind whips around me. It's like that in New Mexico, coming and going in sudden fits, as if to remind the world to stay alert. The sun has made its descent down the sky, and the horizon looks like it's on fire, the scorched land more like Mars than Earth. It seems the perfect metaphor for life, as my parents talked about it, always describing it as hard and cruel. Survival was the only real true thing, so we'd better prepare. My mother was a quiet and somber woman, letting me twist her coarse hair and drape my leg over her waist while she slept as if she didn't exist at all. I reached for her body at all hours of the day to make sure she hadn't left me behind. I wasn't sure why, but I always had the sense that she wanted to leave her life, and it frightened me. When her eyes turned to black glass, I knew she had gone deep inside, but that she'd be back. I knew great things lived inside that very place because she'd eventually paint beautiful visions on stretched out silk in her workroom. A woman's face, her collarbone, an ocean wave breaking on sand. She'd eventually hang them up against the tired white walls of her hallways. I don't remember much from that time, but I remember the swirling yellows, oranges, and reds, the sky on fire. Before I was old enough to go to school, I was my mother's shadow, following her closely as she went from the bedroom to kitchen to grocery store, back to the bedroom. I watched as she undressed in her closet and turned around listlessly, deciding what to put on next. I was little at 4, barely able to reach the thick scar running down her stomach. I remember how ragged the skin felt under my fingers, a zipper of pink and white flesh. I did that for you, she'd say whenever I touched it. She'd point to her scar and say, it's like the line that cut through Korea after the war. Strangers split the land in two, she said, just like Umma's belly. I imagined a zipper making a long line through the soil, opening up the country's history and all of its secrets. Amma, are your secrets in there? I asked, pointing to her scar. Ani, no, she said, Amma has no secrets. She was lying, of course, just like I knew somehow that my mother wanted to leave us. I knew that our family buried things the way my mother did when she turned into a glass-eyed ghost, like my father's terrible temper when he drank and the way his teeth and fists and shit-talking mouth turned into weapons on all of us. It was the truth of my mother's terrible depression despite all our fancy parties. It was the wrath of my parents' hatred toward each other that grew like a hungry fire on all 3 daughters and started new flames of insatiable wrath, making each of us trust the dark more than the light. It would be many years before I understood how our family's pain might be intertwined with Korea's past and the countless times Koreans were trained to hate themselves. That shame might seep into some blood-deep part of you. And then that old pain might circle back into the future, and the future might be me. It might be my children and grandchildren in America if I had any. After they took the embryo and fallopian tube out, I dreamt of parts of my body going missing. One day it was my foot, another my right eye or pinky. I didn't entirely mind. I had always hated my body and hated it more than ever once I realized it was broken. What was there to love? I had been born a girl to a mother who resolved to turn into a ghost rather than be a mother to me. I had flat breasts with inverted nipples, a lazy eye, a winding, twisted uterus, fallopian tubes braided with scar tissue, a protein in my blood that told growing embryos not to attach where they should. Around the time I started fertility treatments, I developed an infection in my right breast, and it quickly grew from an occasional tickle to a sharp flicker of pain next to my heart, hot and constant, reminding me things were not truly okay beneath the surface. The infection continued to come and go as I underwent a dozen fertility treatments, and I began to think of it as a gatekeeper to my body. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Beth, thank you so much. That was beautiful. So it is my honor to introduce our next reader, Keetje Kuipers. Keetje Kuipers' third collection, All Its Charms, was published in 2019. A former Stegner Fellow, her poems have appeared in the Pushcart Prize and Best American Poetry anthologies. Keetje is editor of Poetry Northwest and visiting professor of creative writing at the University of Montana. Please join me in welcoming Keetje Kuipers.
Thank you. You surprised me, Jenny. I obviously don't remember the order that the alphabet goes in. So I'm going to read 2 poems. They're both sex poems, and one of them Pleiades took and the other one they passed on. So you can decide for yourself. No, actually, they had an edit for me on the second one, and I passed on the edit, but I feel like it does need an edit. So you can tell me in the comments, send me a little message, help me out with that one. Okay. Summer again. I found the sunning snake like some trinket I'd lost and then forgotten. Gilt earring, novelty keychain, lover left in the sheets. It lay on the rock as if some lazy hand, lightest of touch, had abandoned it there. The truth is that I haven't been inside my wife's body in years. Imagine living with a creek in your backyard, crush of wild mint at the bank, Slick stones pinned beneath its glossy lip, the ancient bugs hatching from their own skins and dreaming the terror of fish, deep pools like dark yarn gathered, the burble of it always in your ears, and you never dipping a finger inside. Instead, all summer, every summer, another ending we didn't ask for. The sickly, sweet thump of soft, feathered bodies hitting the glass above our bed, the dry heat rising from our stillness like dust. Okay, and here's the one that still needs a hand. Oh, once I read this, that's going to be a terrible pun. Oh my God, it's after the last poem. It's already a terrible pun. Okay, ignore that. Bleeding. The world is trying to kill me. One news story, one sneeze, one bad president at a time. And maybe I don't care anymore if I'm dead. That's what I used to think when she put her fingers inside me. I don't care if I die. It felt so good. She loved my body when it stank, when I hadn't showered or brushed my teeth. She loved it in the cheap hostels, in apartments haunted by a stranger's cigarette smoke, beneath the pale, hushed sheets of her childhood bedroom, when I was ill, on drugs, the day after I'd gotten out of the hospital, and every week of every month for years, nothing stopping us. Her hands turned bright red with the blood of loving me. We'd put a towel down to sop up the mess, as if I'd died, as if she'd killed me. Our bodies collapsed on top of each other. Just one more murder-suicide, everything but the man with a gun to complete the scene. And here I am, despite everything, pulling a red scarf from between my legs, mumbling, I could die, and still, somehow alive.
Yeah. Thank you, Keisha. And what I appreciate actually is you were referring even to the process of oh, we send poems and we wait to hear back, and the vulnerability involved, and trusting our work with other people. And I feel like this is a good time to say that we really appreciate everyone who trusts their work with us. And I see lots of past contributors and present contributors from this issue, and hopefully future contributors here. And I love that as a community, that's kind of our ethos, right? Let's take, so thank you so much. I get to introduce now Ruby Hansen Murray. Ruby Hansen Murray is a citizen of the Osage Nation with West Indian roots. An award-winning columnist for the Osage News, she travels between the reservation in northeastern Oklahoma and the lower Columbia River estuary. A poetry and prose writer, her work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and received fellowships at Hedgebrook, Ragdale, and Fish Trap. Please welcome Ruby.
Hawe Zani. I'm so delighted to read with these incredible women, and I'm grateful to Pleiades and Aaron and Toni, and to everyone who's come to listen. And I'll read a fragment from the essay that's in the piece called Desert Creatures. El Paso was the threshold between our military and civilian lives. It was unrelenting sunlight, rough sand, sparkling mica in the rock wall behind our flat roof house, the clank of skates on concrete, and my bony knees. We came home from years in Japan and France to Fort Bliss, where the desert is laced with artillery and gunnery ranges, explosives, and armored tanks. In military language, I'm a dependent, a beneficiary. My father is not the man posing beside a tank. not the tyrant flipping quarters on our bunks. In the stark landscape, the purple-blue mountains felt like home. It was the last expansive place we lived before the cloying Texas version of Middle America closed in. We left El Paso for San Antonio. Driving from the spiky tip of Texas across the Chihuahuan Desert toward San Antonio in the humid center of the state, we came upon a box turtle. In Oklahoma, where my father was born, terrapene ornata is common. I see them crossing gray two-lane roads, winding up and down through basin and range over the limestone escarpments flush with fossil fuel. Maybe that's why he let us pick up the turtle. It rode with us in a cardboard box, the four of us with the turtle on a bench seat of a station wagon. We had begged for a dog, but we had to wait because, my father explained, it wouldn't be right to keep it tied up when we lived in military housing without a fenced yard. I imagine he didn't know that box turtles are not recommended as pets for children. They're stressed by overhandling. Taking them from the roadside further depletes their numbers. I feel badly now to learn how loyal they are to their home grounds. They live 40 to 60 years, some to 100. They say pet turtles have escaped and have set out for home, wandering lost until they die. But I can't imagine following them. In San Antonio, we put the turtle in a pen with leaves and grass and called it Cloyd, my father's middle name. I loved the alignment of Cloyd's head and neck, the pebbly cowl around his face, his clumpy but elegant walk, a deliberate swimming motion that carried him across the yard. We called Cloyd he, though we don't know our turtle's gender. Having a pet made us seem like a real family. We fed Cloyd iceberg lettuce, not recommended, I now know, and raw meat. I watched the fierce hook of his beak. I admired Cloyd's ability to pull his arms and legs and head into that round helmet and appear inviolate. Even tucked into themselves, turtles are still vulnerable. My father, Ted, was quiet too. This year, I learned that he had been to Guadalcanal. He'd never mentioned being in the Pacific Theater during World War II, though we knew of his experiences in Belgium and France. These days, I wonder at someone so quiet, almost passive-aggressively so, and also so kind.
Ruby, thank you. Oh, Cloyd. I felt so at home in that piece. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It is my pleasure to introduce our next reader, Elizabeth A.I. Powell. Elizabeth A.I. Powell is the author of 3 books of poems, most recently Atomizer from LSU Press. Pick up a copy and I'll drop a link after I finish introducing. Her second book of poems, Willie Loman's Reckless Daughter, Living Truthfully Under Imaginary Circumstances, was a Books We Love 2016 by The New Yorker. The Boston Globe has called her recent work wry and fervent and awash in, and I want to say this is one word, and I'm going to try to get through it, Liz, awash in synesthesiastic revelation. Wow. Her novel concerning the Holy Ghost's interpretation of J. Crew catalogs was published in 2019 in the UK. Recent poems appear are forthcoming in the New Republic, Stand, and American Poetry Review. She is editor of Green Mountains Review and professor of creative writing at Northern Vermont University. You can find out more about her work at her website, which I will drop a link to in the chat. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you, Erin. I love Pleiades. I love the work you put out, and I appreciate all the hard work that you do. So I am going to read the poem that appears in Pleiades and a new poem. And the first one's called Rituals and Spells I Do So Nothing Heinous Happens, Double Checking the Baby Monitor, or postpartum OCD and me. Baby in the microwave, baby off the terrace, baby stolen by terrorists. How many babies have I run over in the last 20 minutes? Baby in the microwave, baby off the terrace. I've been knocked up, knocked out. I'm too young to know what to do. My new husband, old enough to be my father, clearly doesn't like me, doesn't talk. I speak the language of baby monitor. Everything is organic, not tested on animals because we are in Vermont. Sing, sing, home on the range. War blares on TV, just in time for dinner. Joy of cooking casserole, silver palette, cookbook salad. Vermont town tap water tastes like the apocalypse. My mouth has a chunk of electricity stuck in the back of it, and I hear the end of the world in the baby monitor. I dream the lottery numbers and wake to forget them. I want to be rocked, so I rock the baby. As long as I watch Wheel of Fortune, the world remains calm. I cross my fingers, wear a cross that's not mine. Baby in the microwave, baby off the terrace, baby stolen by terrorists, baby made into ice cream by Ben and Jerry. When will you be home from the office? I ask in English, translated from baby monitor to my new husband who doesn't like me. The question means I'm scared to be myself with the baby and the baby monitor. I've been knocked up, knocked down. Everything's organic and locally sourced and not tested on animals because we're in Vermont. And Prozac is new. I won't touch it. Where has Wheel of Fortune gone? The spinning wheel of chance. I will be okay. Maybe. Baby on the roof of the train station. Maybe. Okay, baby. War in the desert blares on TV. Just in time for dinner. Sing. Okay, the next poem, oops, I'm not used to reading off my screen here. Okay. The next poem I'm going to read to you is a new poem I wrote. I'm reading it because it's super scary to me to read it in public. I'm scared of what this poem will bring to me, but I feel like it's important to read. There's growing anti-Semitism in Vermont, in Burlington, Vermont, at the University of Vermont in particular. And there's a pro-BDS movement that the city council tried to pass. And this poem also engages with the idea that Jews have horns. And it's also talks about my experience spending time on my grandparents' dairy farm in the summer and in the spring and whenever I could. It's called In Spring. First, they shave all their heads as if they are prisoners in their pens. My grandfather restrained one heifer after another. He was grimacing in his striped coveralls. The barn smelled of candles and blood, ritual, milk stink. The hot iron dehorning, disbudding cauterization around the base of the horn. The neighbor helping rotated a horn back and forth, twisting his wrist for a proper burn, leaving a copper-colored ring around the base like a tree stump after it's cut for firewood. I tried to link stares with my favorite heifer, her eyes so wide they looked as if they were each birthing giant marbles. Bandages, long strips of sticky tape control flies to prevent maggots, which was what the boys called me on the playground when they searched my silk thin hair just washed, resplendent in baby shampoo, for horns or horn buds. Maybe they felt them on the top of my little head, those buds I didn't know were there. Was this a game? I didn't know. Where are your horns? They said. I had not recalled my own debudding. The boy put his boot in my stomach. damp suede like the cow's glistening skin when they come in from the April snow. Filthy Jew. Like now, years later, books arranged like heifers in stalls awaiting their turn. I wonder if the boy now thinks he made a mistake, feels terrible, as I forgive him his brutal childhood. I stare out the library window at the university, where spring emerges out of this memory, into where I hear the protesters chanting, "Dirty Jew," in smarter words. I see my colleagues. They look at me. My head burns. Only the gods have horns. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. And thank you, like I said in the chat, for sharing those scary poems. Thank you to all who do that. All who've done, like, I think, and poems and prose. That's why we write, right? To say what feels unsayable. I'm very excited to introduce our next writer. Connie Voisine is the author of the book of poems, The Bower, begun on a Fulbright fellowship to Northern Ireland. A previous book, Rare High Meadow, of Which I Might Dream, was a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Award. Her first book, Cathedral of the North, won the Associated Writing Program's Award in Poetry. A 2021-2022 Guggenheim Fellow, which is, yeah. Voisine directs the Creative Writing Program at New Mexico State University, my undergrad alma mater, and I would not have been a creative writer without that program. Go Aggies 505. Here's Connie.
Thank you all. This has been a really lovely evening and such rich and varied poems and essays as well. So I'm very grateful to be here. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. I'm going to start with a poem that was in Pleiades. These poems are in conversation with images of crime, especially crimes against women. And so if that's hard for you, I just told you, I warned you. As Agamemnon is approaching Troy, the ships are becalmed. And so this is the backstory. To appease Artemis and change the weather, Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. He lures her to Aulis by saying she is to be married to Achilles, actually, and there he kills her. Iphigenia, after Aulis. You're just upset. Turn around, kneel. I wake in the tub and the grout filthy with dark matter, the rain thick outside. By now, I thought my rage would be known. I thought dogs would piss the floor at the sight of me. I'd kill the car with a claw hammer, flame the trash with my yell, and I would wreck some more. But no, I left messages for him which sounded pitiful. The city looks better when wet. Many footbridges stripe a tepid canal with fat swans. Bride is how they described me. Later, cut her loose, her hands too, is all I can make out from the terrible video shared by many. The photo of my hands, broken nails, the sticky puddle. I had no more home. And these poems are drawn from this interest I have also in crime novels. I detective novels. I read about one a week. This is how I got through COVID and quarantine and continue to get through, but I'm also interested in movies, shows, the news. And in this next poem, the speaker, a woman, interrogates hagiography as a form of crime and these images of crime that we see around us and why we might be drawn to them. The sensualist. Like St. Julian, I met a handsome stag in the forest who told me I would kill someone, that I might wake to bloodied hands, mud on my shoes, unsure what has been dream and what is memory. A whole family gone off a cliff, shot in the kitchen, children, etc. The mother is often the one who's found dragging her dying self toward a phone, a knife, a son who may be the shooter, or was it another troubled one? A lover caught in a bed, a neighbor stumbled into wreckage, attempted heroism, the foster children gone to. She, he, they would not have done this horrible thing. And I would like to think I would not have become the time bomb we often discuss and ticking. I would like to know for sure I was not volatile, nor one who made up the wrong details to protect the gaps in my memory. Morning after pill, laundry, bleach. I see the spill of blood, a shattered window, and wonder how and why I might have done something like this. Problem is, I can imagine doing most things fully enough to feel guilt. And this is a quick one. The last poem is a prayer. I need to make up for what's happened. A prayer to our dead and their bodies. It's called the Office of the Examiner, which is what they call the crime scene investigator in the UK. Peace to you, boy on the bike, the teenager who OD'd against the door, the man in the halal slaughterhouse who fell down amongst the living sheep, and hello to you, dear body, in the derelict row house, your bruised face and broken heel. Hello, dear body, too old to do more than wait for relief, and the neighbor who has the keys and brings soup, and you too, dear human, given to bleeding too easily, dear body, who has too much pressure in her veins and heart that cannot help enough to stay well, and well enough that for you now still shout on the corner, thin arms jerk and flail and intermittent impulse, and love to your mother who doesn't know where you are, and even though you used her all up, she will cry when we tell her the news, and you sipping at the colorful world in the gazebo at the park before you pull the trigger on all that seemed too much, and you who wished for other things, and you who had come in for a purchase, and you so generous, you blasphemer. Thank you.
Connie, whew, thank you. Thank you for those poems. Thank you for that prayer. I needed to hear that. Also, we need to have a conversation about crime because it's also my obsession and what got me through COVID as well. So I don't know if you've ever seen Vera or read the book. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk. So it is my privilege and honor to introduce our final reader of the night, Toni Jensen, who is also our guest editor for the fall 2021 issue special folio on essays from the Southwestern United States and borderlands. So Toni Jensen is the author of Carrie, a memoir of survival on stolen land, and a finalist for the Dayton Peace Prize and a New York Times Editor's Choice book. An NEA Creative Writing Fellowship recipient in 2020, Jensen's essays have appeared in Orion, Catapult, and Ecotone. She is the author of the story collection From the Hilltop. She teaches at the University of Arkansas and the Institute of American Indian Arts. She is Métis. Please join me in welcoming Toni Jensen.
Thank you so much, both for having me guest edit and for that lovely introduction. I'm sorry I had to be late. I do teach at University of Arkansas, and I was teaching up until 7:30, so that I'm in my classroom. First, I had a tail from the TV behind me, and then I moved, and now I have a sink. Lovely choices of backdrops in our posh accommodations here at Arkansas. Thank you so much for including me in this. I'll read a little from the start of Carrie in a minute. Paperback just out. So first reading from the paperback, which is kind of exciting. That was yesterday or the day before. But it was really a privilege and a pleasure to read all the good work coming out of all corners of the Southwest. Texas is a place I've lived in and have a love-hate relationship with, especially West Texas. When I went to graduate school in Lubbock, it was voted the second most conservative place in the country. And yet I found writers who were of like mind, artists, musicians, places like that, I think bond people together in a way that maybe places like, well, maybe other places don't. I'll just say that. Something about the sky there and the solidarity. And then working at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe too, that New Mexico landscape has really transformed the way I think about writing and teaching and literature and what's possible being in that space, which we haven't been able to do for a while because of COVID, but being in that space has also really transformed me. And I get more writing done in that landscape and in the West Texas landscape than anywhere else. I finished my book in Marfa, Texas. Carrie was finished there. And so picking then
I was looking toward essays that were transformational, and all of the prose that came in, really, it was hard to choose because everyone wrote so beautifully, so many women's stories in particular about moments of transformation. And so I was glad to get to hear you read, Ruby, and Beth, I was sorry I didn't get to hear you read, and I was sorry to miss others as well. But yeah, it was a real true pleasure to get to select from all of the beautiful work that came in. So many stories of loss and moving forward, and how the landscape either moved people toward loss or toward moving forward, or and sometimes both. So thanks again to Pleiades and Jenny for facilitating all of that. Much appreciated. Okay, I'm just going to read the beginning of Carrie, because that first section is about the right length and gives you an idea a little bit about the book. So it's chapter 1, section 1, Women in the Fracklands. 1. On Magpie Road, the colors are in riot. Sharp blue sky over green and yellow tall grass that rises and falls like water in the North Dakota wind. Magpie Road holds no magpies, only robins and crows. A group of magpies is called a tiding, a gulp, a murder, a charm. When the men in the pickup make their first pass there on the road, you are photographing the grass against sky, an ordinary bird blurring over a lone rock formation. You do not photograph the men, but if you had, you might have titled it Father and Son Go Hunting. They wear camouflage and their mouths move in animation or argument. They have their windows down as you have left those in your own car down the road. It is warm for fall. It is grouse season and maybe partridge, but not yet waterfowl. Despite how partridge are in the lexicon vis-a-vis pear trees and holiday singing, the birds actually make their homes on the ground. You know which birds are in season because you are from Iowa, another rural place where guns and men and shooting seasons are part of the knowledge considered common. Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary defines in season in relation to timing, levels of fitness, and whether a thing is legally available to be hunted or caught. The first use of off-season comes in 1847. Definitions include a time of suspended or reduced activity, a period of time when travel to a particular place is less popular, or sports, a period of time when official games, tournaments, etc. are not being played. Magpie Road lies in the middle of the 1,028,051 acres that make up the Little Missouri National Grassland in western North Dakota. Magpie Road lies about 200 miles north and west of the Standing Rock Reservation, where thousands of Indigenous people and their allies have come together to protect the water, where sheriff's men and pipeline men and National Guardsmen have been donning their riot gear, where those men still wait, where they still hold tight to their riot gear. If a man wears his riot gear during prayer, will the sacred forsake him? If a man wears his riot gear to the holiday meal, how will he eat? If a man enters the bedroom in his riot gear, how will he make love to his wife? If a man wears his riot gear to tuck in his children, what will they dream? Magpie Road is part of the Bakken, a shale formation lying deep under the birds, the men in the truck, you, this road. The shale has been forming over millions of years through pressure, through layers of sediment becoming silt. The silt becomes clay, which becomes shale. All of this is because of water. The Bakken is known as a marine shale, meaning once here, instead of endless grass, there lay endless water. Men drill down into the shale using water and chemicals to perform the act we call hydraulic fracturing or fracking. The water chemical mix is called brine, and millions of gallons of it must be disposed of as wastewater. In the Bakken in 2001, more than 1,000 accidental releases of oil or wastewater were reported, and many more go unreported. Grass won't grow after a brine spill, sometimes for decades. River fish die and are washed ashore to lie on the dead grass. There, just off Magpie Road, Robins sit on branches or peck the ground. A group of robins is called a riot. This seems wrong at every level except the taxonomic. Robins are ordinary, everyday, general public sorts of birds. They seem the least likely of all birds to riot. When the men in the truck make their second pass, there on the road, the partridge sit their nests, and the robins are not in formation. They are singular. No one riots but the colors. The truck revs and slows beside you. You have taken your last photograph of the grass, have moved yourself back to your car. The truck pulls itself close to your car, revving parallel. You are keeping your face still, starting the car. You've mislabeled your imaginary photograph. These men, they are not father and son. At close range, you can see there is not enough distance in age. One does sport camouflage, but the other a button-down shirt, complete with pipeline logo over the breast pocket. They are not bird hunters. This is not a sporting moment. The way time suspends indicates an off-season moment. The one in the button-down motions to you out the window with his handgun, and he smiles and says things that are incongruous with his smiling face. Thank you.
Everyone feel free to unmute yourselves and give everyone, all of our wonderful readers, a big round of applause. Thank you all so much.
Yay.
So thank you all for coming. This was such a wonderful evening, and thanks to all our readers. That was a really special night, and your work is beautiful, and we are honored to feature it in Pleiades. So thank you for being here. And if you'd like to subscribe or purchase an issue of Pleiades, I dropped a link in the chat. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone.
So much.
Thank you, Erin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you, Toni.
Thank you.
See you on the online world.
Good night, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good night.